If you're here, you've decided or are deciding to start a company, business, or startup in 2025. I run a tech company called Lectra, and I decided to go all in on my business in 2023. Since then, we've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, have partnerships lined up with the largest sports organizations in the world, and in this video, I'm going to be taking you throughout the entire process of what happens after you decide to take that leap. Make sure you don't forget to subscribe, and let's cook. We partnered with the largest snowboarding company in the world, Gilson Snow, and this came about because I'd reached out to one of his investors and he introduced me to Nick. We started talking for a while and he was helping me out with the process of building a startup because I was pretty new to it, and he's a veteran and he knows exactly what it's like building a massive snowboard company. We talked for a while and he invited me to come build my own custom snowboard around Lectra at his facility. So we spent months designing, going to visit the facility, and then you can see how the board itself turned out. And the next one was the $385,000 that we'd lost. I brought Cole on as my co-founder, but he was one of our interns at the time, so we could go compete at the Arizona State University Innovation Open, and the winner got $385,000, and I think that we got rooked, but it's whatever. It was super cool. We had to go into Arizona State's engineering lab to fix one of our printed circuit boards at the very, very early stages before we had anything that really worked, because it broke that day. I was coming back from a flight to Houston and we had to go into their labs. We stayed in their innovation center and we're just building, practicing, working that entire day. I think we were there for like 4 days actually, just grinding it out, ended up losing, and it was all on TV as well. So it was pretty embarrassing, but you live and you learn, made us better, and brought us to where we are today. Leaving everything behind to build a startup in New York. This was super cool. I was a part of a TV show in Westchester back in like 2021, and I met another founder who makes a powdered sauce, and he's about to exit the company, which is super cool. And he invited me to his house to help build the branding around Lectra. So the logo you see, the color design you see, he was a huge part of us creating that logo. So I was super thankful to get the tours around Syracuse University, meet some of the really cool people who were a part of it as well. And he helped me structure the cap table too for the first time, which then we took to the next video where I pitched to a millionaire in person at 23. And ultimately, I spent this entire process like prepping, practicing, getting all the pitch together. He had told me before, like weeks leading up to it, he was so excited. He was looking to become a part of Lectra. And I remember driving like 3.5 hours just to do this one pitch. And he, after 10 minutes of talking, he was like, yeah, I'm not investing. I was like, is there a reason why? Do you not like me? Do you not like what we're doing? He's like, no, my wife just said I can't invest in any more companies. And I was like, I wish we could have had this conversation before I drove 3 hours. So I had to drive 3 hours there, and then I had to drive directly 3 hours back after a 10-minute breakfast that I didn't even eat because I was sick to my stomach from having to drive so long. And at this point, I didn't even know what to do. I remember this was before we finished any product. This was before the real series really started for everything. So I was like, is this something I want to keep pursuing? I was having doubts then, and it's like the best way to predict the future is to create it. So you kind of just have to like lock in to the point where you're so optimistic people will think you're delusional, which is when I had started filming the actual Road to series. So I've been writing down my schedule every single day. Today's day 1,504 of writing down my schedule every single day from when I started building the company down to the minute of what we do. I track my sleep, I track my goals, I'm tracking, literally it's a to-do list, it's everything. So I called it the Road to series because I've called it the Road to 1 million. So making my first $1 million with the company has been the goal for everything, and that's the entire premise of the series. The first episode was I'm building a startup from the ground up at 23. And in this episode, I remember was the very first time that we ended up getting any money. And this fucking pitch, at the beginning, we got $10,000 in investment from it, but now, since then, we've closed another $135,000 just off of this first pitch of this first episode that I had. So if you guys are looking to start and like watch this whole series from the ground up, I would recommend starting from there because that's really the genesis of when everything got crazy. I pitched at a country club. They sat around this massive table next to everybody, and it was go time. You know what I mean? Like we literally, from the ground up, it was like as startup-y as you can get. It was scrappy. I raised my first amount of money from them. I brought pictures of prototypes and renders and clay designs of things that I was gonna make, and it was cool because they ended up coming to fruition specifically. But it was a stressful process, not to say the least. And then the second one is a 24-year-old's advice to building a $10 million company, because the company's now valued at $10 million 4 years later, which is absolutely insane to think about. But there's a lot of stress that piles up. So in this video, I talk a lot about what it's like dealing with the stress, dealing with the things that come along with building a company. Like for me, it was tough. Like I came out of school and all my friends were going to med school, dental school, law school, and here I am like living at home, not for much longer, moving out next month, finally. But it's hard because you're like, you kind of have to create your own job. And I talk about this a lot in the video. Like you're kind of employed, you're not really employed, but you have to build your own job out of thin air. It doesn't exist. You have to create it. As opposed to the traditional pathway of like everybody knows what the end goal is to get the job and do the thing. But the end goal for you obviously is exiting the company, or for me, but like I always say, like it's not about seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. It's about seeing enough light to take the next step. And we were way back then working with the best manufacturers in the world. I didn't know the best way to build this, and we were having trouble because it hasn't been done before, and we patented the whole process now of doing it. But at the time, we were just like throwing different things together. Like our very first demo, all the way back in the videos in 2022, if you scroll all the way down to like pitching my startup to a billionaire, our very first demo was built out of 7-Up cans. And now we have this fully fledged, commercialized, functional product that's going through the FDA, that we've patented, that we've been working on some pretty heavy software firmware development on over the last 48 months now. And it takes a lot. It takes a lot to do it. So we finally ended up partnering with these manufacturers and this engineering firm, my co-founder and I. And it's like a lot of heads down. I'm glad I got these blue light glasses because it's like a lot of time spent in front of the computer as well. And in this episode, we talk about the very first steps of the process. So it's like you have to ideate, design, build, test, and then automate, which is kind of like what we're getting into now is the automation process. The first product demo was super cool. It was the first time I realized that this thing was like, it was tangible. Like we could actually build something that we could use. And this wasn't the wireless version yet. We had renders and designs of what the wireless version was going to be. But this first design was like, dude, it was real. We took an existing TENS device, we built it directly into the pod. And from there, it was like, okay, we have something. Like this is possible and this is unique. And that's when we started patenting it right there. So then Road to 5 was scaling a business across the United States at 24. This video was the first time we got a check outside of this first syndicate group. So it was super cool. I never met them in person. I had just had a conversation with them over the phone a couple of times, and they just wire you the money, right? Like it's insane. You sign the papers and then you wire the money. So in this episode, it was a lot of that process of setting it up, like formalizing documents, because there's so much stuff that goes in the back end of this whole process of like creating operating agreements, shareholder agreements, capitalization tables, like employee contracts, because then you're going to have to be paying for employee benefits and healthcare. So it's like it's crazy to think about now because you're like, fuck man, I don't have any money to be doing this. Why do I have to spend money on something I don't even know if I'll have to do in the first place? Because I understand it now because we're at that point and it's like, dude, if you didn't have that, you wouldn't have a company in the first place. So it was just kind of a crazy thing, I guess, to be experiencing. The secret to building what people want was super cool. I flew down to Florida, spent some time over my birthday with my buddy and his family, but it started to get a lot more real. We finished our first design in this episode. Like, I know we met with the team a lot here. We were working on a case design, mechanical drawings for our first pod, and it was tough. I mean, it's like you're juggling a lot of different things. Well, I'm also fundraising throughout this entire period, which for my other founders who are watching these videos, like, you know, that's a full-time job as well. What they don't tell you about building a startup, the 3 secrets. So, I mean, there's a lot of shit that, like, you have your known unknowns, like, what do you need to get from point A to point B? But the unknown unknowns is like, what do you do when this happens, right? So that's why you get mentors. That's why you go through that process of like bringing on team members and people who have done this before. So we recruited some of the best PhDs, like engineers in the entire world to get this done, who have a track record of success. And in this episode specifically, it was like making sure that we got all this process done. Now, the $1 million raise in Philadelphia, breakthrough. We've been grinding for the last 6 months, and I got to do one pitch here for $1 million. We didn't get the $1 million from this fund, but they had passed us on to another fund who ended up investing in us, which is a crazy thing in itself. And at this same time, I haven't really talked about it before, but I was cold reaching out like 20 to 50 emails a day within this video. And one of the emails I sent out on LinkedIn ended up being the ones who threw $100,000 from our first VC fund into us. And then this was our only shot to partner with the NBA. There was a team, an NBA team, that's looking to work with us, and now an NHL team as well, where when I was in Canada on vacation, it just so happened that he was in Canada as well. So in this episode, I'm talking to him. He's one of the head performance coaches at one of the best teams in the NBA, and he's like, look, dude, if you can get this done, like, we'd absolutely love this. And then right then and there, he got me in contact with somebody from the another NBA team as well. And then within the same episode, I mean, we're talking to the NFL too. So it was crazy. Like, we went from the first episode of the series, you guys see we're building with 7-Up cans, to episode, what is this, 9 now? Within 9 episodes, we're talking to the fucking NBA. So stuff moves really fast if you're doing it the right way. And what's even crazier and cool about this is, like, there is no right way. If it works, that's the right way. We did another $1 million pitch here. I remember their minimum check size is $1 million, which is, like, exactly what we had needed. I was visiting my buddy in New York City, and it just so happened that this VC lived in New York City, so we did a live pitch. Like, I recorded the whole pitch in this episode. It was row 210. Talking about that entire process was ready to go. And we had some cool updates on the prototypes. Like, we didn't have a prototype finished, but I think in this episode I started showing, like, they had it done in the factory, and we're ready to start sending us some of the product here pretty soon. And then I've been chasing my dreams for 1,292 days. That's road 2, day 1,292 is the day that this video dropped. And I was in New York City and Baltimore in this episode pitching. I remember I pitched to Boost VC, who ended up passing, but I mean, they had really good insights. They just invest more in deep tech, and I don't really think that we were up there. They said we weren't innovative enough, I guess. So it is what it is. They're missing out on some bread. It was just cool showing people what, like, the day-to-day is when you're kind of, like, I call it almost in the trenches. I did 2 or 3 pitches in this video, so there's a lot of moving around. We're doing, at this point, in road to 11, we're doing, like, 8 or 9 pitches a week. So I'm spending 3 to 4 hours a day sending emails, pitching for 1 hour to 2 hours a day, and then the rest of the day is, like, engineering and design with the team. And then road to 12 is when we showcased the app for the first time. We had finished our first render of the design, or we finished our first prototype for the app that wasn't usable yet, but it showed what the first design was going to be, which was really cool. We also had a breakthrough with our investors, where this was, like, one of our first big checks. Like, we found out that it could be happening, but it wasn't locked into anything yet. And then in road 213, it was a $100,000 startup pitch from a cabin in Canada. So now we started getting along farther. We have the videos of what our first prototypes are looking like for the tape. The pod's almost done, and then the app you guys had saw in this video. But we got into the final pitch stages for Techstars Fort Worth. So they started with, like, 350 applications. We were top 20, and they take 10. So we pitched to Techstars, and we got rejected, but we didn't know within this video yet. I knew it was going to be done in July, and at this point it's like June, but I think they wanted us to finish it at that time, and we just didn't have the money to get it done yet. So we were, like, kind of moving along very slowly because we were at the mercy of how fast our manufacturers were able to move in accordance with their other clients and stuff. And then road 214 and 15, it was getting really stressful because I was trying to make sure that we hit the timelines with the manufacturers by July to show Techstars that we'd finished. And I remember there was a lot of back and forth with them. We brought on a new engineer just to help us move along the process even faster. So I was, like, spending money on that and spending money on the development. So it was like a 2-pronged approach, and it was getting really stressful because it was coming out of the wire. It was like we were trying to spend money to make a bunch more money, but we had to be able to, like, I was spending money making sure that we were hitting the timelines for them to then decide to want to bring us into the program and give us the money. And then at the end of road 215, I remember they had finished the first, like, final design of the pod, and they did our first demo, but I didn't have it in my hands yet. So then road 216 was super cool because it's like, if we don't launch this product, my business fails, because it's like a streamline from, like, look, we have these deadlines. If we don't hit these deadlines, then the company dies. So in road 216, it was super dope because, like, we finally had got the product in my hand for the very first time. It was just kind of like this holy shit moment. This is real. This is a thing. And we couldn't test the product yet because the tape, our tape manufacturers were still finalizing that. But we had the pod, we had the app. I remember that we were finalizing the firmware. So we had the app was done. The pod was done, but the communication between the two wasn't done, and the tape wasn't done yet at this point. So I was stressing, because road 217 is when we got the final decision from Techstars, and they'd rejected us, not I think is because the head of the Techstars program in Fort Worth said, we're having trouble visualizing what the final product was going to be. And like 4 days later, we finished it. And at the same time, we were pitching a Y Combinator and then also South Park Commons, which is another massive accelerator program as well. So we finished Lectra for the very first time. Everything worked. Everything was in my hands. I started doing demos, showing what it looked like. It was an absolutely surreal experience going from like all the way back in 2021, 2022, when we flew down to Houston for the first time to make this prototype out of 7-Up cans to now, as I mentioned before, this fully functional product that I was able to hold, put on, use, that was in my hands. It was insane. From there, it was back in Road to 9, where I was talking about bringing on these NBA and NFL teams, and then Road to 18, this is 9 weeks later, we finally landed them as a partner to at least try the product. Day 1,316, where we finally had that conversation with them where they're like, yes, if this works, we'll buy it. We'll get you in contact with all of our people. I remember they were even like, we'll get you in contact with our distributors to make sure that you can get this out to us as soon as possible. And that was like, at that moment I knew, I was like, this is real. This is happening. And then the next one was away from the Road 2 series, but it was just introducing my new recovery company, Lectra. It was me dropping our very first like product demo, showing people what it was, what it did, and how it worked. I expected more views on that, but you know, it could have been less. So it was just really cool because a lot of people were very receptive on that video, and that actually led to us getting our first really big check of like over $100,000. Between that and the next video was like, my company built a Hollywood ad with $0 because every time I pitched to VCs or every time I pitched to like potential investors, I just show them this video. I'm like, look, this is what it is. This is the differentiation, and this is what it does. And it's like easy. It's if you explain it, tape, app, pod, people are like, oh, okay, that's awesome. Because I was like talking about way too many in-depth things and scientifically backed like jargon, and people are like, I don't get it. And I just sort of like tape, pod, app, and people are like, wow, this is great. Road 219 is like, I built a medical device at 24, so it was 4.5 years later. Now, this is the behind the scenes of that ad that you guys had saw right before this. It was that whole process of like how you have to ideate the marketing side. So like figuring out our target markets was tough, and then, but I mean, no, it wasn't super tough, just like time, right? Like we did like 250 customer interviews now, and it's like you talk to all these people and finding out who the target markets are. You're carving out the ideal customer profile, and then you can market based off of that. So my friend David and I, he's like the model in that video, are coming up with a way to market it and then shoot that video, which ended up being an ad throughout that entire process. Road to 20, where we're left off right now, is super cool to me because like my thing is durability with this. Like I want to be able to wear this. If I have a problem, I want to be able to have this on as long as possible so I'm not feeling that problem. And for me, part of that would be like, we have to battle test it for every single scenario. I want to wear it in the water. I want to wear it running. I want to wear it swimming. I want to wear it lifting, anything. So in this episode, I literally battle tested that process of like making sure you could swim with it and then use the device right after. We have a lot more planned. We're flying to some pretty cool places. We're meeting with some teams, some professional athletes. And we actually did already. Like, I'll give you a little sneak peek. In one of the videos, we did a demo with some UFC fighters, and we went to a UFC event. It got pretty crazy. So what I'm going to say from this is if you're looking to start a business or a company, whatever, in 2025, it's going to be hard. Like, a lot of the times you're going to be like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, what, is this going to work? I could be doing a job. I could be doing something else. This is ruining my social life. Because I'm talking from personal experience, man. Like, it's fucking hard, and you're going to be thinking a lot of your decisions a lot of the time. But as you get over that hump, as you get through that process more and more, and like, I mean, the inflection point for me is finishing the product. Already did that. Getting a lot of money in helps a fuck ton as well. And then getting through the process to be able to start selling. And like, we have a long road because we're going through the FDA, but depending on what your business is, you could cut some steps out. You have to add some steps. It's all about that process of getting from point A to point B. And I always say, like, I had a soccer coach who was like, you can't control adversity, but you can control your response to it. So things are going to happen all the time. Your philosophy just literally has to be, we'll figure it out and take it step by step, day by day, brick by brick, and before you know it, you're going to have a house built. And that's kind of the philosophy that we have, continuing to move forward through all these videos that we built in 2024, and then all the videos that we're going to continue to keep cooking in 2025. Thank you so much for watching, and now that we actually have money to cook, 2025 is going to be a crazy year. So subscribe, stay tuned, and I'll catch you in the next video.
Stepping on the neighborhoods that I was always walking on. You said you was gonna kill me when you see me, what we talking for? Shout out to the fallen soldiers just protecting me.